It was the kind of Christmas dinner you imagine in movies. The fireplace crackled in the corner of the King Estate's grand dining room. Snow fell gently beyond the frosted windows, powdering the evergreens in the yard like confectioner's sugar. The table was set with heirloom china, linen napkins folded into swans, and a roast ham that glistened under a chandelier of hanging crystal. Laughter bounced lightly between sips of mulled wine, and for once, everyone was pretending to be a version of themselves we could all tolerate. Then my grandmother raised her glass. "Leia," she said with that warm, deliberate voice of hers, "I hope the money was useful, too." The room paused. I blinked. Smiling, I lifted my own glass. "Thank you for the letters all year, Grandma. I really appreciated them." Her eyes didn't move off mine. Her lips curved. "But surely the $500,000 helped more than the letters, darling." Just like that, the atmosphere changed. 1 week earlier, I had been sitting alone in the Helix Gate Analytics office in downtown Denver. It was 9:47 p.m. My coworkers had all gone home to spouses and Netflix queues. I was deep inside a firewall breach from a health insurance provider, isolating packet trails and timestamp anomalies. This was my zone. Numbers don't lie, and neither do metadata timestamps. The only thing that interrupted me was my phone buzzing against the wood of my desk. Hannah calling. I stared at the screen. My younger sister never called. She texted. She memed. She sent filtered photos and passive-aggressive group chat remarks. Phone calls from Hannah meant drama or manipulation, or both. "Hey," she chirped when I answered. I could practically hear the pout. "Just letting you know, things are a little tense at home. Grandma's not feeling great. Forgetful. Tired. Honestly, we might cancel Christmas." "Is she okay?" I asked. There was a pause. "Yeah, she's fine. Just, maybe stay in Denver this year. You work too hard anyway. Relax." The line went quiet after that. She didn't care about my relaxation. She never had. That night, after saving my work and pulling up my secure digital keychain, I logged into a dormant account Evelyn King had created for me in college. It was the financial equivalent of a time capsule. The balance, $200. Except, the transaction history said otherwise. 2 months ago, my grandmother had wired $500,000 into it. The day after, $499,800 vanished. The account that received it was tied to a down payment for a penthouse suite in Redwood Falls. Renter, Chase Lell. Hannah's boyfriend. Supposedly an app developer. Actually a walking Ponzi scheme. The IP used to authorize the wire transfer didn't match mine. But the password was my old one. Someone had used my identity. They had made it look like I spent the money and left me holding the bag. Instead of blowing the whistle, I started collecting. IP logs. Screenshots. Social posts Hannah hadn't meant to be incriminating. A copy of the lease. It was all breadcrumbing into one very clear narrative. My family was hiding something. So I booked the flight home. The house looked exactly as I remembered. Smelled like clove and pine and aged wood. My mother was the first to greet me. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Your grandmother wanted you to have this," she whispered, pressing an envelope into my hand. "She's not doing so well. Don't make a fuss. Just say thank you." Inside the envelope, a check for $200. Signed sloppily in Evelyn King's name. I smiled and nodded. Of course. Wouldn't dream of making it awkward. But awkward was coming. Christmas dinner began with laughter, candied yams, and Hannah narrating every bite of her meal for a vlog she hadn't edited in months. My father drank quietly and excessively, as usual. My mother deflected any real questions with busy work. I observed. Collected. Filed every glance and half-smile like evidence. Then Evelyn raised her wine. "Leia, how are you liking the money I sent you this year?" I played innocent. I lifted my glass and said, "Thank you for the letters all year." She didn't miss a beat. "I hope the money was useful too. It should be, what was it, $500,000. The silence that followed wasn't loud. It was strangled. My mother's fork slipped from her hand. My father stared at the ham like he could dive into it. Hannah blanched and clutched her phone. "What money?" I asked softly. My grandmother leaned in, puzzled. The wire I sent. I told Rebecca to handle the details, you didn't get it. Rebecca. My mother. Who was now staring at her wine like it might have poison in it. The room didn't explode. It imploded silently, delicately, like a snow globe filling with ash. No one moved. The clink of the antique clock on the mantel was suddenly deafening. I waited. It was what I had been trained to do. In data breaches, the first few seconds after discovery are the most revealing. Panic leads to patterns. My mother blinked slowly and forced a soft, breathy laugh. Oh, Evelyn, you're confusing things. That was a different account, I think. You know how wires get tangled. My grandmother turned toward her with the kind of quiet intensity that only the matriarch of a dynasty can command. No, Rebecca. I'm not confused. I sent my granddaughter $500,000. In good faith. I told you to make sure it was handled discreetly, but not diminished. Now the room had shifted. Hannah's cheeks were as pale as the bone china in front of her. Chase Lell, sitting beside her and wearing the smug smile of a man who thought charm was currency, suddenly looked alert. I leaned back in my chair, slow and deliberate. Grandma, when exactly did you send the money? October 3rd, she answered immediately. It was after your birthday. I wanted you to have it before year-end. Of course. It aligned perfectly with the records. I turned to my mother, but I didn't ask a question. I just watched her. She broke faster than I expected. It was supposed to be a loan, she whispered. Just a temporary reallocation. To whom? I asked. It wasn't like that, she said, but her voice was brittle, cracking. We had bills. Hannah needed support. Chase had opportunities. You forged Grandma's signature, I said, and transferred money out of my account, using my login credentials. Chase opened his mouth to object, but I cut him off. Don't. I traced the IP address to your stupid co-working loft. You used a Chrome extension with keylogger vulnerabilities. Rookie move. Evelyn was staring at my mother now with an expression that could chill oceans. You told me she received it. You showed me her thank you note. I looked at her. What note? Rebecca reached slowly into her purse and pulled out a printed email. My name, my writing style, my old sign-off. But I hadn't written it. That's an AI mock-up, I said. I can tell. The punctuation's too formal, and I haven't used that email account in 2 years. My grandmother took the page. She was trembling slightly. Did you use me to launder your mess? My mother's eyes were glassy. She didn't answer. You stole from your daughter, Evelyn said, her voice low, dangerous. And you lied to me. For a few seconds, no one breathed. Then Chase stood abruptly, scraping his chair back. Okay, this is getting out of hand. Maybe we should all take a minute. Sit down, Chase, Evelyn snapped, sharper than I'd ever heard her. He sat. Where's the money now? I asked. No one answered. So I said, I already know. But I'd like to hear it from you. Chase didn't speak. He looked to Hannah, who looked to our mother, who was now visibly trembling. A chain of eye contact, tight and desperate. No one wanted to say it. So I did. You bought a condo, Chase. With my money. Didn't even have the decency to make the purchase clean. You had to hide it under shell leases and false names. But you forgot something, metadata. Chase finally scoffed. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I said, sliding my phone across the table. I can. Evelyn reached for it. On the screen was a full report, traced IP addresses, server logs, timestamps, and even a photo of Chase holding a set of keys on the balcony of a condo he claimed not to own. Public metadata is a ruthless thing. My grandmother's eyes scanned the data. Her silence was more damning than anything I could have said. Then she turned to my mother. You knew. Rebecca's voice cracked. We thought it was a loan. I didn't know he'd move so fast. I thought. You thought I'd never find out, I said. You thought I'd stay in Denver and let the silence do your dirty work. Hannah burst into tears. I didn't know it was your account. Chase said it was just a transfer. I thought he was investing. You thought. Evelyn snapped. Or you knew and didn't care? The truth was, they had all known something. Enough to lie. Enough to cover. Enough to cash in. Chase stood again, slower this time. We can fix this. I'll sell the place. I'll return the money. You'll do more than that, I said, standing with him. You'll write a statement. A full confession. You'll sign it in front of a notary, or I'll forward this dossier to the SEC, the local police, and a very aggressive financial crimes unit that I consult for. You wouldn't. Try me. Chase's jaw clenched. Hannah reached for his arm, but he shook her off. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he muttered. We were going to build something real. The condo was just a foundation. The foundation of what? Fraud. Evelyn spat, the glass in her hand trembling. You used my name, my gift, and you buried it under layers of deceit. This wasn't a mistake. This was premeditated theft. Rebecca tried to speak again, but I held up a hand. Enough. You let them do it. You gave them access. You forged a signature, and you never once thought to ask me if I got the money. You knew the answer. Leah, Hannah whispered, mascara streaking down her cheek. We're family. Please don't let this destroy us. I turned to her slowly. Family? You tried to keep me away. You lied about Grandma's health to stop me from coming home. You intercepted a gift meant for me and spent it on a man who's been lying to you since the day he showed up with his fake startup pitch deck. Chase bristled. It wasn't fake. I ran your code, Chase. There's nothing there. Just recycled scripts, stolen templates, and buzzwords. You don't have an app, you have a scam. Evelyn pushed her chair back, standing with slow, deliberate effort. Her voice came like thunder wrapped in silk. I want all of you out of my house. Tonight. Mom. I set out. She looked at me. Leah, stay. Rebecca hesitated, eyes red, lips parted in a silent plea. But Evelyn turned away from her like she was a stranger. You'll return every cent, she told Chase. And if you don't, you'll answer to more than Leah. You'll answer to me. Chase hesitated, then nodded tightly. You'll get your confession, he muttered. Good, I said. You'll get to keep your freedom for now. That's more than you deserve. The front door opened minutes later, letting in a gust of freezing air and carrying the echo of betrayal out into the snow. I stood in the entry hall, watching them go. One by one. My mother, silent. Hannah, sobbing. Chase, staring ahead like a man being marched to the gallows. The door shut behind them with a hollow click. Evelyn came to stand beside me. You always were the one who saw through the noise, she said. I didn't answer. I was still staring at the door. Still trying to remember when exactly I stopped being their daughter and started being their weapon. The silence after they left was heavier than anything they'd said. Evelyn poured 2 glasses of the good scotch, the kind she only brought out for deals and deaths. We sat in the drawing room, fire flickering against the old portraits, her fingers absently tapping the rim of her glass. I trusted her, she said finally. Rebecca. Of all people. She was supposed to be the responsible one. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. My silence was a mirror. You know, she added with a bitter smile, I spent most of my life preparing this family for wealth. For legacy. Thought if I gave them enough, they wouldn't have to steal. Turns out, I was only feeding the hunger. It's not your fault, isn't it? I taught them money solves things. But maybe it just exposes them. She leaned back in her chair. The weight of everything. Of betrayal, disappointment, and 75 years of being the backbone of this family sat on her shoulders like winter. I want you to take over, she said suddenly. I blinked. Take over what? The trust. The estate. Everything. I'm rewriting the documents tonight. I can't protect this family anymore. But you can. You see through lies like X-rays. You don't flinch. I stared at her. This wasn't a gift, it was a battlefield promotion. You want me to be the gatekeeper. I want you to be the firewall. By the next morning, she had the papers drawn up. A private lawyer. A mobile notary. Signatures. Witnesses. The King estate was no longer just a family home. It was a command post. I moved into the West Wing the same day. My Denver apartment remained untouched. I had a new mission now. Rebuild from the ashes of deception. Hannah tried to call a week later. I didn't answer. Neither did Evelyn. Chase texted. Promised restitution. sent half, then vanished. I filed the report anyway. Rebecca showed up once. At the gate. I watched her from the second-floor window, her coat pulled tight around her, her eyes searching the windows for a sign of mercy. She left after 20 minutes. 2 weeks passed. Snow deepened. The house grew quieter, stronger. Evelyn was sharper than ever. Something about the purge had given her a second wind. Then, one evening, she called me to the study. "There's something you should see," she said, unlocking a drawer beneath the floorboards. Inside was a small black ledger, bound in leather, old enough to smell like tobacco and secrets. "Your grandfather kept this before he passed. It's not exactly legal, but it's essential." I flipped through it, transactions, offshore accounts, emergency contacts, aliases. He was planning something? He was covering something. From the war. From before the money. You'll need to read it. There are things I never asked. But you might have to. She handed me a thumb drive. "This matches the ledger. Encrypted. You're the only one who can break it." The past wasn't buried. It was archived. And it was starting to resurface. I spent the next 2 days dissecting the ledger. It wasn't easy. The entries weren't just numbers, they were ciphers. My grandfather hadn't just hidden money. He'd hidden purpose. Each alias had significance, each transfer a ripple in a pond that had long looked still. Offshore companies in Belize, shell corporations based in Prague, a dummy art gallery in Amsterdam that hadn't sold a painting in 20 years. But the thumb drive, that was the true motherlode. I cracked the encryption by cross-referencing old server logs Evelyn had unknowingly preserved on her vintage desktop, password clues buried in emails from decades ago. The drive opened like a steel trap, revealing a directory labeled only AREX. Inside were documents, surveillance photos, contracts, and videos. One of them dated back to 1979. I watched my grandfather, much younger, handing over a briefcase to a man with no name and a camera-shy face. There were references to a fund called the Evergreen Buffer. It was supposed to be for family emergencies. But the transactions told another story. The buffer had become a tool. Used to bribe zoning committees, buy out rivals, and even fund a private investigator who had once followed Evelyn. That one caught me off guard. Why would my grandfather spy on his own wife? Evelyn didn't flinch when I asked. He thought I was going to leave. "Were you?" She turned toward the window. "Once. Then I decided to stay. Not because I forgave him, but because I realized I could outlast him. And I did. But one file stood out from the rest. It was labeled Dahlia. It was a scanned copy of a birth certificate. A name I didn't recognize. But the mother's name? Rebecca Evelyn King. She had a daughter before me, I whispered. She had a sister, Evelyn corrected gently. She was 15. Her parents forced her to give the baby up. It wasn't something we talked about. But Walter, he never forgot. He kept tabs. Where is she now? I don't know. But I think the money, it might have been meant for her. Not you. Not Rebecca. I reeled. Everything I thought I knew about our family tree shifted. What do I do with this? Evelyn sighed. That's why I chose you. You don't flinch. 3 weeks later, I found her. Dahlia Monroe. 51. Living in Portland. Quiet life. Librarian. No criminal record. No idea she was the ghost in our archives. I flew there with a copy of the file. I told her the truth, not all of it, but enough. She didn't cry. She just listened, then said softly, I always wondered. We talked for hours. I didn't tell Evelyn right away. I waited until New Year's Eve. She was in her armchair, sipping tea, the firelight playing across her silver hair. I found her, I said. Evelyn nodded slowly. And? She's kind. Smart. Stable. She wants nothing from us. Evelyn chuckled. So she's the opposite of the rest of us. She deserves something. A piece of the buffer. Maybe a connection. Evelyn looked into the flames. Do what you think is right. That's the only legacy that matters. On January 2nd, I transferred $250,000 into a trust fund for Dahlia's grandkids. On January 3rd, Evelyn passed away quietly in her sleep. She left the estate to me, but the real inheritance wasn't the house or the titles. It was the clarity that families are not built on blood. They're built on choices. On truth spoken when lies would be easier. On the strength to clean up the mess without becoming the mess. And I was no longer the crime scene. I was the firewall.